Today I'm going to talk about dyslexia again. I know I've spoken about it before, but it's been particularly on my mind this week for two reasons. One reason is I met with Tom Delahunt, who I mentioned the other week when I read one of his poems about, it was the boy who stares out of the window. I met with him. He's very inspirational, and he helped me to understand bits about my own dyslexia. He's dyslexic, and we had really good meeting. It was fantastic. The other reason is my supervisor for my doctorate, Christy. She messaged me a link to this article about dyslexia, 20 things that you should know about those with dyslexia. And I've put that up as my helpful hint, so I'm not going to just read through the article. I'm going to pick out a few key things. It touched me, and it actually, I'll admit, it made me a bit emotional, because she highlighted a few things that she said specifically were me. One was they may not know they have dyslexia, and they may think of themselves as stupid, and she's put that as, that was you, it isn't anymore. I think the thinking I'm stupid, it still happens quite a lot, but I recognise now that I'm dyslexic, whereas before it was, I might be a bit, I've spoken about that before. She also, unfortunately I've highlighted it in green so it's hard for me to read, they think in pictures instead of words, and that's very true. And when I had to produce a poster for a scholarship day, and suddenly this idea became so concrete, that was because I do think a lot in pictures, and Christy recognised that in me, and by getting me to do something in a diagrammatic form and a picture form just clarified my thoughts so well. Another thing she said is that they will always have dyslexia. No, sorry, that's not what she said. That's something I'm going to go on to talk about. She said that, sorry, I'm on both sides of the page, they can be incredibly successful, and I found that very emotional. And quite often that success is tied in with the dyslexia, because of the way their mind works. It's sort of, it does link in together. And she put that they can change the world, and these were things that really moved me, that she would say that about me. And it's because we look at things differently, and we see things other people might not see. The being successful, there's a list of famous people who are dyslexic, which you'll see in the article if you read the article. I picked out a few others which I wanted to share. I'm sorry if I keep going back through the paper. It's actually interesting, because one of the things that is about the way you organise yourself or not. But anyway, they find details exhausting. That's because if we're reading something, I mean, I'm always being told, oh, why don't you just read the manual? No, if I read the instruction book, it's actually going to be harder for me, because that's just too much to take in. It's exhausting to read. Using the numbers and the details, it's absolutely exhausting, and then you can't necessarily take it on. Show me how to do it, I'll be a lot better if you show me how to do that function or whatever. At one time we had a VAT registered business, and I used to do the VAT return every, however often it was 3 months or whatever, and every time it was like starting from scratch, because it wasn't something I was repeating all the time, and it was working with numbers. It was exhausting, absolutely. I dreaded it. This was an important one. They function differently on different days. Some days I don't appear dyslexic at all. I'm happy, I'm getting on with it, everything's coming easily. Then another day I simply can't read a word that I've read 100 times. It's not that there's no necessarily a pattern to it, except I would say that when I'm under stress or when I'm tired, it's as though I'm more dyslexic or whatever. It sort of comes up more. It talks about being highly creative, and for me that it's to do with the way your brain works. You can come up with some crazy ideas, and you're not sort of confined by the restrictions of reality. Sorry, that sounds a bit awful, but yeah, sometimes you just have this amazing idea, and other people might need to rein you in a bit, but you see possibilities that might not be seen by other people. For me, that has really helped me come up with coping strategies, and I've offered a lot of support to people, to children and to teachers over the years, because I can just come at it and think, well, why wouldn't you do that? There's just something somebody else might not have thought of. You've got that you can be overwhelmed by this. You know, you may see things that others don't see, but it can actually be overwhelming, that your thoughts, and this has affected me in my doctorate, that so much comes into your head, and to then sort of sort it out and focus and process and organise it can just be overload, information overload. If I'm at a meeting and too many people are speaking all at the same time, and different, it's like whoa, or sudden voices, or too fast, or you're just like whoa, just stop, and then you might just focus in on one thing. It can just all be a bit too much. And there is something called, it's a horrible word, it's often called comorbidity, which sounds awful. Basically, if you have dyslexia, you're more likely to also have aspects of other things, and the same is true of those other things. So if you have ADHD, if you have AS, if you have dyscalculia, a lot of things sort of coexist. So it's possible you'll have traits of one. It's the important thing is it's so much more than just reading, writing and spelling. A lot of people just focus in on that. You know, you can't be dyslexic. You read really well in, you know, when you have to read things out loud. Yeah, I read it really well, I admit that. But I don't always know what I'm reading. I just get the way it's presented on the page and will say it with meaning. If I haven't read it before, I quite often will have got to the end of it and go, oh, that was really nicely read, and I haven't got a clue what I've read about. Not a clue. So the other thing is about the confusion between your thoughts and reality. And this has been a really big thing for me. In my Viva, I was told repeatedly, but that's not on the page. And I'm like, yes, it was. I wrote that in my thesis. No, I didn't. It wasn't there. And it's because sometimes if you've thought it, you've said it in your head. You've actually said it. And it's very hard to distinguish what you've read, what you've thought and what you've said. And sometimes these get confused and you think you've said something when you haven't. Or you know, it just does affect the way you communicate sometimes. So the other thing is that it's not going to go away. If you're dyslexic, you're dyslexic. It may be that some days are easier to manage than others. Some days I can read things really well, and other days I just look at it and it's gobbledygook. It's absolute gobbledygook. And it's you can have things that will help you. I use a dyslexia-friendly font, for example, when I quite often use, I mean here you might see I've got yellow paper. I use dark blue ink. It just holds things a bit more still for me. But it's not going to go away. Okay? It's also familial, so normally if one person in the family has dyslexia, then somebody else in the family had dyslexia. It comes through the family. Another thing I wanted to mention is an important one. It's on self-esteem. You feel that you're stupid quite easily because you know, I mean, I know that according to my dyslexia report, I'm intelligent. It says so in black and white. I've got the figures. 99.8 percentile for intellect. Great. When you can't communicate what you want to say, when you are struggling to read something and gain meaning from it, to keep up with the reading, when you're writing something down and it's coming out incoherently, you still feel stupid. having it written down as a fact that I have X intelligence, yes, you're on the, as I said before, 99.8 percentile, that's high. But when my processing of certain things is on the first percentile, and some of my reading speeds are on that very first percentile, and you've got that big discrepancy that for intellect only 0.2% of the population would be higher, but for reading 99% would be reading it more efficiently than I am. That's pretty powerful stuff, and it means there's going to be things that you're going to find really hard, and then it's very easy to have your self-esteem lowered. A big confession here, I don't like making phone calls to people. I'm more than happy to speak to people on the phone, but I always feel if I phone someone, I'm intruding, and I'm not worthy of breaking into their time. That's about self-esteem, and that's something which happens to a lot of people who are dyslexic. I need to be able to read this one. Yes, different symptoms. I think I've already said that. We're not all the same. There are different aspects of dyslexia. So I can decode words, I can read, I know my phonics, I teach that stuff, I get that stuff. I've over and over rehearsed it. I was very late at learning to read. I'm very, very slow at reading. My comprehension is fine while the passage is in front of me, and I can go back and you ask me questions, I can find the answers. You take that passage away and I can't remember what I just read. And part of that is also something which, it says difficulty organising ideas, but it goes beyond that. There's something called executive functioning, which is the way we do things. So it's like doing things in a logical order, if you like. For day-to-day tasks, that's fine. But things like getting ready to do this video. So I got this printed out, I wanted to work from this. I got that printed out, that was fine, that was organised. Didn't think about the colour of the highlighting, and I've had trouble while I'm talking, I've had trouble trying to read some of that. But I got everything set up, didn't have the camera out. Just didn't have, so I've got my tripod, I've got my phone, and I'm ready, and I'm like, where's the camera? I haven't got the camera out. Now, it would have been logical to get that camera out at the beginning of the process. Now, I produce a video every week, but I haven't yet got familiar enough with the routine for setting it up to be able to organise my phone for remote operation, my tripod, putting the camera on it, knowing what I'm going to say, and just being generally organised. I've done these with the lens cap on and had to redo them, all sorts of things. It's that executive functioning of a task. If you do the task often enough, the executive functioning gets better because you have various aspects of memory going on. But for things that you don't do every day, some days they happen better than others. So I can appear, I know it's really frustrating for my poor husband, but when we're getting ready to go out, I think I'm ready, and then invariably as we're about to leave it'll be, oh, I must just, and it's because I'm not organised. I try to be organised. At work I was able to be very, very organised in the office. I knew where things were, what they were, very good, very thorough systems. I'd set them all up from scratch. But leaving the house, I might have a different handbag that day, and then I have to really stop and think, do I have my keys? Do I have my phone? Do I have my purse? Do I have my, important for me, my lipstick? Whatever it is, and I will have forgotten something. It's almost inevitable that, oh, I need to just. And it is so frustrating for my poor husband because he's very organised, and I don't do it to wind people up. But I do struggle with that, and it's all part of the dyslexia. And we are all different. These are all generalisations when you read it, on the website, when you see that and you read it through. Yes, there's a lot of sweeping generalisations. What I've done with the video is try to explain what it's like for me. And then if you're reading the if you're reading the helpful hint, I'll also put it up there as the vlog for this week. If you listen to the video as well, you can see how well they applied to Helene in this way. So that's what I wanted to share, because this week my dyslexia has been very much on my mind. Thank you.